Here we are going to discuss about that geography polity question देख लेते हैं. Constitutionally, question number 1. Constitutionally granted judicial independence is other prerequisites of the democracy commands. Approach. Introduction. Write about the constituency and the granted judiciary independence and briefly. Body. Write the different constitutionalities and granted provision ensuring the judiciary independence and write how and the constitutionally granted judicially independence is other prerequisites and of democracy. Conclusion. Give appropriate conclusion in this regard. Introduction. Constitutionalities and guaranteed judicially independence refers to the autonomies and impartialism of the judicial system, ensuring it operates and without the interference and from the other branches of government or external forces, and Articles 50 of the Constitution encourage and this the independence and freeing the judiciary and from the executive's controlled. This framework is crucial and for the protecting human rights and upholding the rules of law, maintain a system of the check and balance, and which are the fundamentals, foundational element of other democratic society body. Constitutional provision related to the independence of judiciary in India. Articles 124 appointment of the Supreme Court and judges, and these articles deal and with the establishment and the constitutions of the Supreme Courts, and it is the outlines the process and for the appointings judges, ensuring the selection are based on merit and the qualification, and this the help maintain the independence of the judiciary by promoting the impartiality and competent amongst judges. Articles 214, Articles 215 High Court in state and thus and the articles government and the establishment and power of the High Court in Indian state, similar to the Supreme Court, and the prizes for the appointing High Court judges is designed to ensure their independence and thereby the promoting fairs and the unbiased judiciary and proceedings and aid the state levels, and Article 15 and the separation of the judiciary and from the executive. Articles 50 and the explicitly and mandate the separation of the judiciary from the executive branch of the government, and this separation is the crucial and for the maintaining judicial independence, and as the highlighted in the landmark and Keshwanath Bharati Wells State of the Kerala case and the 1973, and which and the underscore and its and the significant as the parts of the basic structures doctrine of the Constitution. Articles 121 and 211 restrictions on the legislative and discussions. Thus articles and prohibits and the legislatures and from the discussing and the conduct of the judges, and thereby the safeguarding and judicially independence by the restricting legislative debates and on the judiciary conduct, thus the provision and protest and judges from the political pressures and undues and the influences. Article 125 say and 221 and the salaries and allowances, and thus the provision and ensures that the salaries and allowances of judges cannot be the altered and to their the disadvantage after their the appointment, and thus the financial security and guards and judges against the manipulations and reign and forcings and there's the independence. Article 32 and the 226 and powers of the judicial review. Thus the articles empower the Supreme Courts and High Courts and with the powers of the judicial review. For example, the Supreme Court decisions to straighten down the National Judiciary Appointment Commission and JAC and Act in 2050 and the referee affirmed and the judiciary independence by preserving the GS system for appointing judges. Articles 124 and 217 security of the tenures for the judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court, and enjoy the security of tenure until they reach and the retirement ages of the 62 and 65 respectively. Under the Articles 124 to 70, this provision protested judges from the arbitrary and removals and allowing and them to adjudicated and cases and without fear or favors, furthers and ensuring the judiciary independence. Thus, constitutionalism and provisions and collectively and fortified and the independence of the judiciary in India, enabling it to function and impartially and uphold the principles of justice and fairness and rules of law. Constitutionally guaranteed judiciary independence is the prerequisites for democracy. Rule of law for other democracy to function and effectively laws and must be the interpreted and applied uniformly. And for examples, the landmarks and case of the Keshwanand Bharati Wells and the state of the Kerala's 1973. In India's the underscored this principle and stabilizing and that the basic structures and of the constitution and cannot be the altered and by the legislative amendments. And this case exemplify the judiciary's and role in the maintaining the supremacy of the constitutional and the rule of law. Protection of rights and judicial independence is crucial and for the safeguarding citizens' function of fundamental rights. For example, in the cases of the Maneka Gandhi and Wells, the Union of the India 1978 and the judicial established and that the freedom of the speech and expression has no the geographical boundaries and these rights and the encompasses and the availability of the citizens to the gathers and informations and exchange ideas and both the within India's and the internationally promotes and fairs and trials and the independence judicially is crucially in promoting fairs and trials. A cornerstone of the democratic government and judiciary independence ensures that the justice and is the administered and impartially and free from the external pressures or influences. For example, in the Nirbhaya case, and despite the massive public and outcry and the judiciaries and the afforded and the insurance, the justice was and the surveyed based on the evidences and legal standard, promotes the transparency and judicially independency and promotes the transparency in the legal system as the judges and are the free and to the make decisions without fear of the retributions or and the interference, and this the transparency is vital and for the public confidence in the judiciary process and the overall integrity of the legal system. For instance and in the several landmark judicially the judiciary has and the afford the citizens rights and accountabilities in governance and encourages and accountability independence and judiciaries and ensures that those is the positions of powers and hold the accountable for their the action, and this means that the government officially politicals and others influences individuals are subjected to the sum of the laws and as the ordinary citizens and can be the scrutinized and the judges impartially in conflict resolution and guarding constitutional integrities and public path. Conflict resolution and independence judicially play a crucial role in resolving the conflict, whether and they are the between the individuals, organizations, or even the branches of government, and by the providing other neutral platforms and for the adjudications, and the judiciary ensures and that the disputes are the settled and based on the legal principles and evidence and rather than the power and dynamics or political influences. For example, the Ayodhya's and verdict delivered and by and the Supreme Court of India and resolved either decades and all and the long and the communal conflict and through the well reasonals and judgment and democratic and the judiciaries and capacities to address complex and sensitive issues and impartially guarding constitutional integrities. Judiciary review is the powers of the judiciaries to examine the constitutionalism of the legislative act and the executive actions, and the independent judiciary ensures and that this and the critically and functions is carried out and impartially and safeguarding the integrity of the constitutions and the preventing the abuse of power and by the other branches of the government. For example, in the NJAC and case and the judicially struck and down the National Judicial and Appointment Commission Act 2014, reaffirming its and the independence and the commitment to fairness and the impartials and justice and public faith. An independent judiciary and ensures the public trust and through its and the judgment and the actions. And for the example, the right to the privacy and judgment is the prime and example, and where the judiciary is allied and with and the involving global norms and securing and citizens and faith in the democratic principles. Conclusion. In the involving and landscapes and of the democracy and without the judicial independence, the very foundation of democracy and is at risk, and the strengthening judiciary and independence will not and only and the safeguard democratic values and but also and enhances the resiliences against emerging and threat to the justice and equalities, and by the upholding these principles and we can ensure that the democracy continues to thrive, adapt and the uphold the rule of the law in an and the even and changing world. Extra is other the essential elements which are other prerequisites and of democracy: free and the fair elections. Democracy and hinges and on the people's and ability to choose theirs the leaders and through the free and the fair election. For example, in India, the election commission and ensures the smooth and functioning of the electoral process as seen in the massive and the logistically and exercise of the 2024 and general election, and the educated and electorate and the educated and the electorate and can the make informed choices and battle for the proper and the functionings and of other democracy. And various initiatives like the right to the education and aims to the foster and the educated and the purposes and media's freedoms. The free media is the fourth pillar of democracy and providing the public and with the and the based information. The role of the media in uncovering and schemes such as the others and the housing society schemes and underlines, and it is the essential function in either democratic setups. Civil and the liberties and the safeguardings and of the civil liberties as the embodies in and the fundamental rights and outlines in the Indian constitutions is and the central and to the democratic society, ensuring the individuals and freedoms and inequalities and decentralizations and of power. The 73rd and 74th constitution amendment it and revolutionaries in and the decentralizing power and providing other frameworks and for the local self-governance, and thereby the promoting and grassroots democracy and participatory. Question number 2. Who are the entitled and to the receive and free legal aid and assess the role of the National Legal Services and Authority and Nelson in and the renderings and free and the legal aid in India's answer approach. Introduction. Right about the free legal aid and the NALSA and the briefly and body. Right. Who are the entitled to receive and free legal aid and the right and the role of the National Legal Services Authority and NALSA in and the renderings. Free legal aid in India. Conclusion. Right and the appropriated conclusion. Introduction. Free legal aid is a crucial provision and designed to ensure that all and the individuals and regardless and of their the economics or the social status and have the access to justice, and Articles 39A of the Indian Constitution enshrines and the principle of equal justice and the mandated and the provision of free legal aid, and to the implement this the National Legal Services Authority NALSA and was established under the Legal Service Authority Act 1987. Task is providing and free and the compensation legal services to the weakers and section of the society in India. Body entitlement and to free legal aid in India. SC and ST and the Constitution has always emphasized the upliftment of scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe, and SC and ST recognition them as the historicals and marginalized community by entitling and them to free legal aid, and it and the ensures and they can and the contest injustice and without the worrying about the financial implications. And women and children often find themselves at other disadvantage in many social legals and the context, and offering them and free legal aid and not only the fortified their legal standing but also and the signals and the national commitment to the protesting its and the most vulnerable populations, and this the support is the crucial in addressing issues and like the domestics and violences, child and custody and the discriminations and individuals in custody and being other custodies and often the restrictions and as and the individuals and access resources, and by providing free legal aid and to the detainees, especially in the juveniles and the Indians afford the principle of the fair and the trials and insurance that one economic status person with disabilities. The unique and challenges and faced by the person with the disabilities make it the crucial to offer them other legals and playing field in the legals and arenas by extending and free legal aids. India's ensuring their the right and the dignities are the preserved and promoting their the full and the participation in society and access to justice. Low income groups and victims of the trafficking and the juveniles and victims of the ethnic violence and the victims of the national disasters and the individuals and workmen victim of trafficking. Human trafficking is other grave and the violations of the human rights, and by the extending and the free extending free legal aid and to its and the victim the system and ensures they get aid the fair's chance to reclaim theirs the life and seeks the justice against theirs the operations, and this support is vital in the rehabilitations and reintegrations of trafficking survivors. Juvenile and due to their the age and the vulnerabilities and required special protection within the legal services and providing them with free legal aid and ensures that their the right are afforded and that and they relieve and fair the treatment in legal proceedings, and victims of the ethnic violence and the communal violence and can have the devastating impact and on the individuals and communities. By the providing the victims and with the free legal aid, the state ensures and they can the seeks and redress and the reconciliations and help to the restore and the normally and the promotes and the social and harmony. Victims of the naturals and the disaster calamities and such as the flood, drought and the earthquakes can lead to the sudden changes and in the social economic status, and by the providing victims of the such and the strategies and with the free legals and aids, the state ensures and they can the reclaim and their the rights and the property or any and the others legal redress. This as the assistance and help in their the recovery and the rehabilitations. Industrial workmen. Industrial disputes often the involve powerful and the cooperation entails and can be intimidating for individuals, workmen, and by the ensuring free legal aid and their the right are protest against the potential exploitations, and they are the empowered to seek justice in cases of unfair slavers practices, and role of the NALSA. Legal and the literacy and awareness NALSA activities and the initiates and the legal literacy programs and such as the legal aids clubs in schools to the foster other cultures of the legality and from other young and ages, and ADR and mechanism NALSA and promotes the alternative disputes and the resolution ADR mechanism including Lok Adalat and which have the significantly reduced the backlog in the judiciary, and for example the National Lok Adalat hold across the countries in 2015 resolve around 1.25 crores cases. Legal aid clinics training lawyers, policy formulations, legal aids counselors, legal assistance and to the prisons and inmates, and community outreach and legal research. Legal literacy and awareness NALSA activities, legal and the literacy and programs such as legal aids and clubs in schools to the foster other cultures of the legalities from the young age, and the ADR mechanism and NALSA promotes alternative disputes and resolution ADR mechanism, including the Lok Adalat, which has significantly reduced the backlog in the judiciary. For example, the National Lok Adalat held across the country in 2015 and resolved around the 1.25 and crore cases. Legal aid clinics and also has established and legals the aid clinics and in rural and the promotes areas, and thus the clinics often run and by the laws and the student and under the guidance of the experience and lawyers bring justice and to the doorsteps of pupils in the remotest and corners of the country. Training lawyers also undertakes as the training of the panel lawyers to ensure the offers and for they offers competent and the professional services. And for instance, the NALSA and free and the competent and legal services regulations and 2010 and standardize the qualities of the legal aid provider policy for nations. NALSA works and tirelessly in the policy formulation and developing the schemes and to the provide free and the legal aid to various the sections of society, including the women, SC and the ST and the persons and with the liability with the disabilities, and legal aid counselors. Appointing legal aid counselors in various the courts and to offer the free legal services has the ensures and that many and get and the representation in court and the irrespectively of their the economic status. Legal assistance to prison inmates NALSA has been and the reaching out and to the prisoners and inmate and why and the stabilizing legals at clinics in jails, helping the reduce and the under trials and the population and significantly by facilitating and wall and the plea and bargain. Community outreach NALSA has initiated and community outreach programs targeting the marginalized group and including the awareness camp in rural areas to help the people understand their the legal rights and available remedies. Legal research why in changes in the legal research and NALSA constantly and works and towards the betterment of legal aid services, understanding the dynamically and changing the need and adapting its strategies and according. Conclusion: free legal aid is other cornerstones in and the ensuring justice for all and the effect of the NALSA, and despite the facing concerns and hardless have been the commendables and reaching out to the marginalized section of the society and going ahead, and it is the incumbent and upon the society and the systems to the work and the scenariologically and to the remove impediments and fosters the cultures of the justice, and that is the truly and the inclusive. The states in India's and schemes and reluctant and to the empower urban local bodies and both the functionings as well as and the financially. Comment introduction right about the urban local bodies and ULBS in India's briefly bodies and the how and the states and in India's and seems the reluctant and to the empowers and urban local bodies functionally. Right how the state in India's and seems the reluctant and to the empower urban local bodies financially. Conclusion: give appropriated conclusion in this regard. Introduction: urban local bodies ULBS and encompassing the Nagar and the Palikas and the municipalities and the municipal corporations. They are envisaged as the administration unit responsible for ensuring the proper governance in urban areas and deriving their the mandate and from the 74 Constitutional Amendment Act 1992, Articles 243 PC 243 ZG. This amendment aims to end the strengthened and local self-government in India. खाऊंगा खाऊंगा नहीं नहीं नहीं
चलो भैया
खाऊंगा आजा
चल रहा है बेटा
urban local bodies ULBC encompassing the nagarpalikas and the municipalization and municipal corporation and where the envisaged as the administrative unit and responsible for the ensuring proper Act 1992 and Articles 243 and PN 243 ZG, and this amendment aims to the strength and local self-governance in and the cities and towns bodies relieve tense and to the empower and ULBS and functionally and the decentralized, and despite the 74 Amendment Act 1992 decentralized remains the challenges and state are the relieve state and to the delegates and substantial powers to ULBS hindrance and the grassroots democracy. For example, recently the Nagaland hold and the urban local bodies election for the first time, and since 2004 highlighted the state and the relief stance and to the empower and the ULBVC and the significant delay in the promoting local self-governance and manpower, bureaucratic control and role in the city's planning, and for intense and the lack of the autonomy in service and the delivery, and for example limitation jurisdictions and solid based and the management, and for example decentralizations despite and the 74th and the Amendment Act 1992 and decentralization remaining the challenging state are the relief states and to the delegated and the substantial powers to ULBS and hindrance grassroots democracy. For example, recently the Nagaland hold the urban local bodies election for the first time, and since 2004 on highlighting the state and the relief stances and to empower and ULBS and the significant and delay and the promoting local self-governance and manpower. ULBS face other storage of the skilled manpower affecting and there the financials the functionals and the efficiency, and for the example and as of 2022 approximately 35% of the positions in India and municipal corporations and remains the vacant. Bureaucratic control and bureaucrats and remain the significant control over the ULBS and limiting and local and governance innovations. For instance, many financially robust and corporations are the controlled by the municipal commissioners and appointment by the state government and with the mayors and surveyings and the primarily as other ceremonials and figures and role in the city planning. ULBS and are the supposed and to the lead city and planning and but the often play and the marginal role, and for the example in the Bangalore and major cities planning project are the handled by the state agencies and the sidelinings the municipal corporations and the limiting its the influences on the urban development. Lack of autonomy in service and delivery and the essential services like the water supply and the water and the management and remain under state and the controls. For example, in Delhi and the multiple authorities and manage the different services, resulting in fragmented and government and influences in service deliveries. Limited jurisdictions and ULBS and often have the restricted and jurisdiction excluding and key urban areas. For example, in Hyderabad and the peri-urban areas and are not under and the ULB jurisdiction leads and to the unplanned and the disorganized and the development in thus the regions. Solid waste management ULBS and have and the limited and control over the comprehensive waste management. For example, in the Mumbai and the North and the dumping grounds and prices highlighted the municipals and corporations and inequalities, inabilities to inefficiency and manage the solid waste and due to the limited authority and relieve stances and to empower the ULBS and financially and independence. Dependence on the state and the central and the grant and many and the ULBS and really heavily on and the state and central grant. The RBI report and on the municipal financial 2022 and the indicates and that the urban local bodies rely on state and the central transfer for the approximately and 35% of their the revenue, financial and the discrepancies. ULBS and face issues of the financial mis and the management and the dis and the prey discrepancies and which and the included in Q read accounting misses of funds and lack of the transparency in financial transparency and poor financial plannings and state and the financial commission. Few states have and the established and the functionals and state finance commission, and for examples is 1990, 1993 and 1994 most as the state have and the formed 3 to the 4 commission as per the constitutional requirement, and however other 2013 and national social health watch report highlighted and that the Jharkhand and had not appointed other state finance and commissions even 13 years and after its and the formations. Property tax and reforms and state and the hesitate and to the delegates and property tax reforms to the ULBS, and for the example and the years 2018 highlighted that the urban local bodies and ULBS in India are failing to fully and the leverages property tax and which is theirs the exclusively domain. According to Peterson's and Institute of the International and Economic China's and ULBS and generates 2022 and of theirs the revenues and from the property taxes and whereas in Indians and ULBS and only and the manages 10 to the 11%. Bond market state have not and the encourages ULBS and to and the utilize bond markets and for example while and Pune Municipal Corporation and successfully raised and funds and through bonds and others, the ULBS in Maharashtra have not the received similar supports and the limitations there the capitals and for the development project. Bond market state have not encouraged and ULBS to utilize the bond market, and for example while Pune Municipal Corporation successfully raised and funds and through and for the development project user the charging state often and prevent the ULBS and from the adjusting user charges and for the services and Denmark and release on the local personal income tax, and US cities government have the authority to impose other wide ranges of the taxes, services, private and partnership triple PP and the relief tenses and to adopt and the triple P and models limits innovations and financial solutions. For example, despite the success of the Hyderabad and Metro and other the cities in the Telangana and have not been and encourages to pursue and triple P and the stifling and the potentials urban development project GST and the implementations has and the standard ULB and the financial and due to reduce and revenues, and for the example the municipal corporation of Greater and the municipal and the Mumbai and the MCGM lost around the 7,000 and the crores or and the 35% of its the total revenue, and with the subs and the assumptions of the taxes into the GST results. Conclusion: the vision of the decentralization urban government was and the outlines in the 74 Constitution Amendment Act 1992 and remains the party fulfilled due to the state and the reluctances to the transfer both the functional and the financial power to ULBS and fully addressing. This gave is crucially into the foster self-reliance and efficiency and the responsible urban local bodies and the pavings. The pay for sustainable and the inclusively urban development in India. Question number 4. Compare and the contract the British and the Indian approach to parliamentary sovereignty. Introduction. Write about the parliamentary sovereignty briefly and write different between the British and the Indian approach to the parliamentary sovereignty and write and the similarities and between the British and the Indian appropriately and to parliamentary sovereignty. Introduction. Parliamentary and the sovereignty refers to the supreme and legal and authority vested in the parliamentary empowerings it to and enacted the amendment and the repeals and laws the supersedings any and the others government. Institutional wise derived and from the British colonial legacy and the Indians and British approach. 2. Parliamentary sovereignty have and involved the distinguished and due to the diverse constitutional provision and judicially interpretations. Different between the British and Indians and the approach to parliamentary sovereignty. Aspects British and the approach and Indian approach. Constitutionals and the fundamentals. The UK has and the uncodified and the constitutional and which implies and that the parliamentary and the sovereignty is more the flexible and is based on the conventional and jurisdictions. Judicial precedent and India has other more codified constitutional just clarities and delineated the powers of the parliament and thereby the providings other structures and approach to the parliamentary sovereignty and judicially review the UK parliament and sovereignty and the theoretically it's and the decisions and by the judicially and the Indian constitution supremacy is the preferred over the parliamentary sovereignty and the Indian judiciary has the powers and to the reviews and parliamentary decisions and even strict down and laws and the passed by the parliament if and the found and if found unconstitutional and making a limit on parliamentary sovereignty. The federal structures the UK and has other unitary system and where the sovereignty of the parliament is individuals and the centralized. India has other federalism and structure and with other division of the power between the central and the state legislative with other bicameral parliament and which implies other shared sovereignty and that is more complex than the nuanced amendment of constitution. The UK parliament can after any and the laws and including the constitutional principle without any the special procedure as it and the does not have a written constitution in India. Amendment and to the constitution involve other more and rigid the process and requiring the special and the majority and in some cases and the ratifications and by other majorities and of the state legislations and including indicating and either restrictions on the sovereignty of the parliament to amend the constitutional at will and also and the basis structures and of the constitutional and cannot be the amendment as per the case one and the Bharati case of 1973. Individual right and the UK has not and the adopted either formalized and system of the protesting and the individuals and right and through other constitutional documents and it is and the relies and heavily and on the common laws and the status passed by the parliaments. India has the compensations and list of fundamental rights are the embedded and in its and the constitution which cannot be the overridden. by parliamentary and laws and the judiciaries. Here has other robust and the role in and the protesting thus the rights and sometimes and even the against and parliamentary enactment. Emergency power. The UK parliamentary and the possesses and bide readings. Power to interact and laws during the emergencies and without the much and the constitutional restriction attributing to its the uncodified constitution in India. Although the parliament has an expansive and powers during the emergencies and thus and are and the constitutionally and are regulated to the protest and federal structures and individuals' right and which are the clears and the demarcables and of the powers and responsibilities. Similarities between and the British and the Indians approach and to the parliamentary and the sovereignty, supreme and the legislative bodies in both the UK and the Indias and the parliamentary and hold the supreme positions in the legislative matters. And for example, the UK parliamentary has passed the landmarks and the legislatives like the Brexit bill and the while the Indians and parliament and has been and the instrument and the passing and GST bills and accountabilities of the executives and branches in both the nation is answerable to the principals to the parliament. For example, prime minister questions PMQ in and the UK and in India's and prime minister are the regularly questions by the members on the floor of the house during the question hours. Legislative process. Both the nations have and the recognize and process for the law makings and for the example anti and defections law in India and want the through the scrutiny and the debates before being added to the constitutional similarities. The UK investigatories powers and Act 2016 was debated and extended. Heavily in parliament and financial controls and both the parliament and over sees the national budget and the economic policy and for examples and in India's and the union budget in the presented and annuals in the Lok Sabhas and in the privileges and motions in the both India and the UK. The privileges motion is other powerful tools and for the members of the parliament MPs. It is used to address the breaches of the parliamentary privileges, ensuring the integrities of the legislation process. For example, in 2018, India show privileges motion moved against then and the defense ministers over the rifle deals and similarly in the UK and such and the motions have been and the raised over the issues of the misleading the parliament role of the president and monarch in both the India's and the UK. Role of the president and the monarch respectively is the largely and ceremonials and with the limited and powers to vote and the legislations or dissolve the parliament and there the involve is and the primarily at the symbolics reflected the continuously and traditional of the state and committee system in both the Indias and the UK. Committee are the essential for the details analysis of issue, providing other platforms for thorough and examination in inform the decisions making and within the legislatives and process. For example, the Public Account Committee and PAC in both and the countries and plays the crucial role in financial oversight. This and the committees and the scrutinized government expenditures to ensure and they are the lawful and the efficiency and the transparent by the holdings the government and the accountable for it the financial operations. The PAC and in the both the UK and India's and help to the mandate fiscal disciplines and the integrities in public and spending. This function is critical for promoting responsible and government and safeguarding public resources. Question hours is the vital tools for the MPs and especially the oppositions and to the six answers and hold the government accountable. For example, in India during 2020 monsoons and sessions, the questions are on and the COVID-19 pandemics and endemics and border tensions and where the raised and similarities the UK has and the recognized questions, hours and where the MPS and can the questions and government actions and policies. Adjournment motion. The adjournment motions allows the MPS and to the discuss urgent and the matters are required, requiring immediate attention. And for example, in India, adjournment and the motion and has been the raised on the issues like the Delhi route in the UK and such the motions and were used during the emergencies like the 2008 financial crisis, separation of power in both India and the UK and recognition the principle of the separation of power and where the judiciary is independence of the legislations and exclusive ensuring the system of the checks and balance. Conclusion. While the British and Indian Parliament share other democratic fundamentals and the functional based on the representing the whole and will of the peoples and with other structures and relations with the structures and the legislative process and they differ fundamental in their the approach to parliamentary sovereignty and rooted in their the constitutional setups. Question number 5. Discuss the role of presiding officers of the state legislatures in the mandatings and orders and impartially in and the conducting legislative works and in and the facilitating best democratic practices. Introduction. Write about the presiding officers of the state legislative briefly and write the role of the presiding officers of state legislative in maintaining orders. Write the role of the presiding officers of the state legislative ensuring the impartiality in the conducting legislative work. Write the role of the presiding officers of the state legislative in facilitating best democratic practices. Give appropriated conclusion in this regard. Article 178. Article 178 of the Indian Constitution of India allow all state and the union territories for the appointment of the speakers as the presiding officers of the house and the presiding officers of the house legislative are the fundamental in the steering and the direction of the legislative proceedings, ensuring the balance and orderly and the impartial and environment and that the facilitate democratic practices. They are the trusted and with the duties and of the overseeing the conduct of the members and while the abiding the rule of the houses bodies and rule of presiding officers of state legislative and in and the maintaining orders, enforcing rule and the procedures and presiding officers play other decision and role in the diligently and enforcing the rules of the proceedings. And for example, in 2018 the Karnataka Assembly speakers demonstrated and remarkable skills in overseeing a high stake floors and test the strictly adheres to and procedures, maintaining and decorums and ensuring the house run and smoothly with uphold its and dignity is crucial. Control over proceedings. Presiding officer maintain control over proceeding effectively and maintaining the discussions and debates. For example, the Tamil Nadu assemblies and speakers has the ensured and that the debates and remain the orderly and issues and the discussed and the comprehensively displaying an effective control over the proceedings and preventing the disruptions and presiding officers are responsible for the preventing and disruptions and ensuring smooth discussions, ensuring impartiality in conducting and legislative works. Fair allocation of the time and presiding officers ensure the fairness and by the allotting and adequate time to the different parties and for the discussions. For example, in the Maharashtra and Assembly, time allocation for the discussion has been and managed judicially to accommodate and diverse and review point. Neutrally maintaining and neutrality and not and favoring any side is vital in theirs the role and guidance on the legislative matters. They offer the impartials and guidance on legislative matters and disputes, allowing diverse and opinions and facilitating a platform where the diverse and opinions are the expressed is and the essential part of their the role. For examples, in Kerala's proceedings, officers have and the encourages members to voice and diverse and perspectives and fostering a real and the inclusively discussions, enrollment presentives and fostering a rich and the inclusively discussions environment, facilitating facilitating and best the democratic practices, promoting the inclusion and discussions and ensuring that the discussions are the inclusive and the represent the varieties of the representative, encouraging research based and the discussions, facilitating discussions ground in thought research to ensure the qualities of debates. For example, the Punjab and the assemblies has the ensures training and development, facilitating training sessions for members to better grasp and parliamentary procedures. For example, workshop and seminars has been arranged in various assemblies, including Rajasthan, to help the members and understand the nuances of legislative proceedings. Transparency, enhancing the transparency in the working of the legislative assembly. For example, assemblies and like the Himachal Pradesh have the adopted measures to increase transparency through the live and the telecast and the documentations of sessions and inviting the public and the scrutiny and awareness. Conclusion, thus and the presiding officers standard as other pillars of the democratic functionality and assure